Hello there, I'm Nu-Trix, and this month, there's something new. I'm starting a new challenge that I'll call 6 Songs in 6 Month Challenge. Actually, let's use an hashtag. It should be 6 Songs in 6 Month Challenge. And this is actually a reason for me to finish my songs. I know we all do that. We create a beat, we start a riff and go, oh, this is cool. And then we move on to something else because we're busy and life takes on its own life. This is a challenge for me and for you if you want to participate with the hashtag. There's also something new this month is I'm starting a membership section of the YouTube channels. For those who want to support my YouTube channel and help me buy a coffee, you can just join in as a member and pay a small fee and just be a member. If you want to go a bit further and have access to extra content, there's a second level you can pay and you get, and I'm not sure about the price because I put it in Canadian, so it's different where you are in the world, but basically if you pay a little bit more, what you get is a exclusive content access for videos that I put out there for you guys. My first type of content I'm going to put there is the information on how I did the song. So I'm going to explain in this video what I did to create the song and to finish it into the final version that will be released at one point after all the 6 are done. But the long version is actually 3 videos. I think you can actually find them on YouTube, but to actually be able to play them, you have to be members of the YouTube channel. So this is extra stuff for those who wanted the extra stuff. And also the membership section, it will be open to, creating new stuff. If you tell me you're interested in seeing me talking about specific things in synthesis or do basically a sound that you ask, or I start and I create just a sound from scratch. These type of content I can create. The goal is to create stuff that is useful to you guys. For the next 6 months, I'll put the detailed version, the long version, how I mix, how I produce, how I select the sounds of these songs. And so this is going to be behind the scene if you want, stuff that you can have access if that is something you're interested in. So that's it. Let's start right away with the video and explain that the first song for this month, the month of July, is called Boarding to Berlin. I'll let myself talk from the other videos and explain how I get to A, the first idea, to Z, the final version that will be released. Let's start with this one. July, first song. It's called Boarding to Berlin. Now, the genesis of that song started as I was waiting to board a plane for a flight to Berlin from Montreal. That's in 2019. I started to use Zen Beats, and I was in the transition from Korg Gadget into Zen Beats at that moment because if you follow me, I did release in 2017 an album that I made entirely on the iPad before AUV3 existed, before a lot of what we have today existed on the iPad. And I was basically using Gadget from Korg. It's still a full-fledged DAW outside of the fact that it does not support AUV3 plugins, which is a huge drawback for me because I want to be able to use the AUV3 plugins. I was, and I'm still, moving out of Korg Gadget. You're going to see in these songs I'll be working in the next month that I go back to Gadget just because I've got the structure, or I have a song there, but I don't want the finished version that is there. I want to finish it so it sounds more complete. We'll go back to that, but this song was not that. I was working with Zen Beats, probably for the few first times, and I started to make a drum beat with it. So just exploring how the drum beat works. I was going into the drum and entering notes, so we'd have something like that. So I like that kind of groove that you have in it. So the double kick, which is kind of bouncy, and you have that cool, for me, industrial noise percussion, but it almost sound in my head like like a guitar that's really distorted. So I liked it right away, and I said, "This is interesting. I want to work more with that." So I added another track, which is very simple, long notes that kind of supports the drum, and I doubled that with again the same notes, but with another instrument. But I mean, none of these sounds stayed. Actually, the drum stayed till the end. Poison 2-2 stayed till the end, and the Model 15 went away. But what I had was this. It's kind of the beginning of the song. At that point, I add to the same riff, I add this new track. And this is going to be played by Alpha from Bleass. It's not quantized. It has that it had me bouncing, you know? Okay. Still gonna have to quantize and clean up, but I have that. So I've got this first one, which is this one. Very long. Orchestration and sound design. And this is where it gets confusing, because a lot of people say, "Hey, I'm a producer," and they don't know what it means. They think that means I'm making a song. If you really want to understand the different steps and jobs that exist into making a professional album, you've got the composer, the person who creates or composes the music, writes the notes. You got the author, the person who writes the lyrics. You have the performer, the person or the performers, the people who play the music and sing the text. It doesn't have to be the creator that is also the performer. Most time it's not. We know a lot of people who do all of that, but most of the time it's not the same people. Then we have the producer. The producer comes in, he's paid by the label to make a product, to produce that song into a product we can sell. That's what the producer is about. So the goal is to kind of mix the creative vision of the band or the artist with the commercial vision of the label. They want to make money. That's what the producer is about. So it doesn't mean that the producer makes the song. You know, the song exists before the producer comes in, or sometimes the producer comes in to help the band create a song. So it all depends. But today, with self-producing artists, it means that you're doing everything. You're doing also the producer part, which is basically take your song and finish it into a product that can be shared and sold. That's the logic of what the producer should be doing. What I do often is I copy the line that I have to another track, and then that other track might be the bass. So I'm going to pick a sound that will be the bass, will be lower, and I go in and I open the track and I select the notes and I bring them down at least an octave lower, and I reduce the amount of notes. I try to figure out what part that is played in that section is basically the root key who's going to support what's played on top by the higher notes from the lead instrument, for example. And then if I have some notes that are just long and hold, sustained, I would actually copy them to another track, and that other track I would put an arpeggiator with a sound that is a short sound, maybe with delay. So then I've got the two parts. I've got the pad or the lead that's with sustained note, and I've got a rhythm that supports it. And then I play with that until I find what I like between the two. And then if I find that there's not space anymore because there's too much stuff happening, I will delete notes from one track to the other so that you might hear the first note on the first track and the second track with the arpeggiator. You might hear the second part of the bar. So they're kind of exchanging or completing the sentence of each other. We start with the BA1, but as remember, the BA1 does not have an arpeggiator in it. So I added the arpeggiator from Zen Beats. Without the arpeggiator, what you get is just like one note and another note. This one is actually Synth Master 1 using a lead, that's a Moog. It's a Moog type of sound with a filter with resonance at the beginning, and then it's sustain with a, so we hear the movement and it glides between the notes. And Butter Synth in this case is doing a pad. It's a very white pad and actually goes into the black hole from Eventide. So same BA1 with the arpeggiator playing. Now notice that I don't have the noisy industrial sound. I had a problem with that noise, that industrial noise, if you understand which one I'm talking about, is this one here. I had it in the original beat that I created. When it's playing at the same time as instruments and sustain notes are playing, sometimes it's in tune, sometimes it's not, and it create that kind of awkward sounds. I decided to take it out of the drum entirely and create a track, and that track is using the subscription synthesizer, which has a very subtle sound. The sound is very simple, almost nothing, but the entire sound that we hear is basically Bit Maestro that distorts the hell out of this thing. And then it goes into boot. This is Synth Master 2, and I like the fact that we have this arpeggiator playing here, but I want to play with the length of the gate. So you just click on it and say add modulation, and I said LFO, I pick LFO1, and LFO1 is actually controlling the gate time. It goes from short to longer where the notes are tied together. And it goes back to... So this is a really cool way to add dynamics to the way that simple riff is playing. And then I enter a new track. I've got same Synth Master 1 playing we had at the beginning, but we have the flow tone. So if I want to stop this, just hear the flow tone. So this is a really cool one. Flow tone is from Tone Booster, and it's a cool. I'll do a video about the Tone Booster flow tone. You have part 1, part 2. You have the modulation effects, and you have the sequencer, and that's what we hear. We hear all of that playing at the same time. And with the gate, which is really nice about, this is really nice. Mixing and mastering for that song. Now, the goal of mastering is to be sure that when you play back that song in different places, it sounds right. It's not going to sound the same, of course, because you don't have the same speakers, same amps, and same environment. When all the songs are ready, then you go to master. And master, I did videos about how to approach master and all the features of mastering using stuff like Grand Finale. There's this difference between when I mix and when I master. I don't see it the same way. I don't approach the content the same way. When I'm mixing, I basically want everything to sound at its place. I want every sound to have a moment for it to, have the time to become the sound that I can hear it. So it's basically EQ, compression, maybe panning, some reverb. But I already did some of that in the production step. And because I'm doing electronic music, I'm always doing mixing. It sounds stupid. It took me a while to understand that, because when I was talking with friends who were recording rock bands and mixing rock bands. They were telling me about all these different ways that they use a compressor for this. So are they going to add some, this compressor on the drums and give it more oomph? When I'm actually combining my sound into my composition and my production part, I'm actually also doing some of that mixing. Because if I don't like the snare, instead of going in with an EQ and changing it in the mixing step, I actually go back to the sample of the snare or the sound that generates the snare and change it until it fits with the rest of the sounds. In this case, I did balance everything, and then I listened to the iPad with my headphones in the bus when I was traveling, and I did most of my mix there. I didn't have to cut a lot because I did that in the synthesis. So when I look at my track, if you look at, there's volume. That's where most of my job is the volume itself. If you look at the effects, I've got grand finale on the drum because I wanted to have a glue for all the drum to sound more together. So grand finale on the drum, and I actually loaded a drum bus and answer. So it's not a mastered plugin in this case. It's used as a drum bus. There's two types of effects. There's I would say the cleanup effects, the one that you use for mixing, the one like EQ, compressor, to control stuff. I use these plugins more like a guitar player would use his pedals and the tone of his amp to say that's the sound I want. So I use these plugins part of the creative process to create the sound I want. So a lot of it has been just playing around with the volume, going back into changing the sound when I found that the sound didn't fit. And in the end, I had a mix that sounded the way I wanted. I use grand finale. Grand finale in this case, it's not so obvious. It's not super heavy. Again, off, on, off, on. If you look here, I'm going to reset this. It tells you that the master out is at minus 12.52. But this is instant. This is not for the whole program. And this might be a problem at one point. Minus 12, what do we mean by that? It's a LUFS. There's different types of metering unit for volume, for decibels. People call it the LUFS. It's loudness unit full scale metering. Loudness unit full scale. Full scale is basically from 0, which is the top value. Over 0, you're distorting. So 0 is the top and minus, I don't know, 80 is minus. It's 80 dB lower. It's very subtle. It means that right now, my volume, my loudness unit is around minus 12 point something. So it's 12 dBs under the maximum before distortion, which is good. And that's usually where I try to mix my stuff, around 12, 13, around that place. Because it means that loudness unit is an average. It measures, in this case, the whole program. So 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz over a moment in time, short moment, and tells you this is the average of everything you have playing here. I would need two things: the average for the whole song and the average on a punctual average that you see over and over changing as we go along. In this case, grand finale does not give us the loudness unit of the whole thing, or the whole program, the whole song, which is a problem because let's say I want to put that on YouTube and play it on YouTube Music. YouTube will analyze the sound and say, okay, it's minus 12. It's too loud because YouTube plays back at minus 13. So if the loudness unit is minus 10, because you mix really loud, it's actually going to bring the volume down 3 dB, which is huge. 3 dB of volume drop is enormous. So when people are listening to your song against others, if you mix it too squashed, very loud, like we used to do in the 90s and early 2000, it will sound softer than the others because the system will bring it down. Keep in mind, If you want to mix it for YouTube and iTunes and all these online distribution system, you should be around 12 or 13, minus 12 or 13 LUF as a full scale for the whole song. In this case, my grand finale plugin, I'm cutting frequency so I don't have any rumble problem. If you have stuff under 20, it's going to be, it could even distort the encoding system. I've got a little bit of compression, not too much. It's a gentle compression. I've got the multi-band compressor again. It's really just to tighten the bass. The width, I'm not using it to become wider. I'm actually using it to center the bass. So I'm using this, the bass is really mono, so it's cleaner than if it's stereo. Equalizer, I don't use them because I really like the mix that I have. And there's this little part here, which is a parallel sound. So we have parallel compression in this thing. And then when I play it, I have, see, minus 12.29, and I'm at minus 1.9 dB before the maximum. So I'm like 2 dBs before distorting. I need to have the full information for the long run. So actually I'm going to go Barricade. Barricade is a limiter, mastering limiter. So I'm not using it at all. It's turned off, limiter is off, compressor is off. So what I'm using it for is really just to analyze this thing. So the one I have here, minus 13.7 in this case, that's the average of loudness for the whole playback that has been there. So it just keeps on adding information for the average. And this is exactly what YouTube will be doing, or iTunes will be doing to your song, analyzing the whole program and says, this is minus 12, okay, I'm gonna have to drop it 1 dB, So I'm looking to hit minus 13 as an average for the whole song. That's the approach here. I'm at minus 13.2, so I'm gonna wait until the end of the song and I'm gonna have the full information. But that's kind of the logic behind this. So my master is really not heavy, it just brings up the bass. It just cleans up the bass so it's mono. It has some of lift for the additional signal path here. I'm cutting the 35 and lower so I don't have that mud. And I'm using Barricade as a system to measure my LUF values. So I know that I'm in the technical reality of the playback system that I'm going to play back in. So let's just listen to it. In a nutshell, I went from A to Z for that song. I hope this is actually useful. If you find I should do different ways or add more stuff or insert different things for the next songs, put your question below. I'll put that in the content. And remember, if you want to see the extra long version, there's the membership section for that. And also, I'm open to suggestion to what you would like to see in the membership section. Stay tuned and you'll see more of that as we go along. That's it. Stay safe, make more music, and see you soon. Cheers.